Well, here's your good news reminder of the day. There are now just 49 days left until Election Day, and all of this will be behind us. And in the latest NBC News SurveyMonkey weekly tracking poll, it shows Hillary Clinton pulling out to a 5-point lead nationally among likely voters. That's up nearly 2 points from last week. But in Florida, which remains the biggest swing state of them all, it's a virtual dead heat. The majority of people asked do not have a favorable opinion of either candidate. And then there is the Trump controversy of the day because it's a day ending in Y, and that's the quota. This one involves a tweet by Donald Trump Jr., the apple not falling far from the Twitter tree in the Trump family. Here's what he tweeted out, quote, "If I had a bowl of Skittles and I told you that just 3 would kill you, would you take a handful? That's our Syrian refugee problem." Trump's tweet left a sour taste in the mouth of Wrigley, the owner of Skittles, or the producers of Skittles. A Wrigley spokesman released a statement saying in part, quote, "Skittles are candy, refugees are people. We don't feel it's an appropriate analogy." And Giancarlo, I agree with Wrigley's that it is an inappropriate and insensitive analogy.
Doesn't mean it's not true.
But I think it's effective. I think that's an effective message.
And it's effective because I would argue that the Democrats completely overcorrected on this issue. And it's been proven, we do not have a foolproof method of permitting refugees into this country where we can assure, to the degree that you can assure anything, that they are not going to commit acts of crime and acts of terror. And that's been proven by allegedly this suspect that was shot in New Jersey who committed the bombings. And so,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He came over when he was 8. He became an American when he came to America when he was 8. There was no way any screening was going to be able to see that.
Fair enough.
20 years down the road.
The point is, the right public policy measure would have been, instead of having this devolve into a partisan debate and bickering, which is what happened, for both sides to say we have one interest here, and that is to protect the country and keep everyone safe. But instead, and frankly, both parties have a degree of guilt here, they retreated to their partisan corners and stuck their heads in the sand. And we're still left with a system that has holes in it.
Immigrant communities have always been hotbeds of political activism, whether it was Italians and the anarchist movement, whether it was Russian immigrants as socialists and anarchists, and like my grandfather, volunteers in the Spanish Civil War, and union organizers and communists. That has always been the case because there's an outside sense of propriety and fairness, because they came here for a reason. That being to the side, that's policy and history and the immigrant experience and waves of diaspora. But as an ad, it's effective. As an ad, I don't know that it reflects a fair or sane policy, but again, I mentioned the Brexit vote before, that poster that they marched around with waves of brown people coming onto the shores in London and the UK was effective. And this ad was effective. And for the candy company owner, yes, right, they're not candy, they're children, they're people, but it was an effective ad.
I agree with your take. I think the ad was effective. I question the validity of the point that it was trying to make. But Dominic, in the pushback against this kind of messaging, doesn't that just give the message more oxygen? It reaches out to more people?
Well, I don't know. I disagree with the assessment that's been made thus far that it's an effective ad.
Go on.
Because it just exposed, it confirmed every stereotype that we have about the way that Donald Trump sees the world in a very simplistic way. And to compare refugees to Skittles, I mean, I really want to know which rocket scientist came up with this idea, because I don't see it as effective.
This was a more sophisticated and complicated ad than we've seen from him in a period. This was actually a nuanced argument.
Here's the point. In the aftermath of the debate we had about the refugee crisis and whether or not we would institute legislation that would cut it off, curtail it, whatever, facts came out in light of the San Bernardino shooting that proved that the 2 perpetrators had posted things on Facebook that should have, could have, would have raised alarm bells. And yet we were told by our government that, well, yeah, we didn't check that.
Okay, but
clearly there is a flaw in the system. So for one side to say you're a racist, you're a bigot, if you want to shut it down when it comes to this policy, I mean, that just doesn't hold water.
Okay, but wait a minute. Aren't we really saying here, let's think about this. If you knew that 3 of the Skittles could kill you, would you still eat it? Isn't that broad brush racism? You're shutting down everybody?
No, The point, no, because, and again, I mean, this is kind of silly to try to deconstruct this in a Skittles argument, but right, exactly. No, but the point is, and I'm not advocating for the Trump position, but many Republicans, many on my side of the aisle said, all we really want in this immigration debate, and to be clear, the refugee immigration debate, not the broader immigration debate, is some assurance that we have a system that works. If you can assure that the system works, then we're willing to consider it. And the government, I mean, there was testimony in Congress that said, yeah, you're right, we're not even 100% satisfied.
How can you ever be fully sure that either an American won't become radicalized at some point?
You can't be, but when we learned that social media was not a consideration when it came to vetting people, I mean, that says to me that there is a problem that can be more easily fixed than not.
Before I pivot to debate, we touched on some of the swing state polling, at least in Florida. And Michael, what's the biggest thing that Hillary Clinton needs to do to improve her standing in the swing states between now and Election Day?
I don't know that the polls are ever going to reflect an improvement or an uptick in her standing there. I think it's all about the ground game and having communities of color and older Jewish voters and other urban metropolitan areas run up the numbers and outweigh what I expect will be, and we were talking about this during the break, larger numbers coming out of the Panhandle and areas outside Tallahassee and places like that. So I don't know if the polling is ever going to reflect a smart pivot, but I think that they're just going to have to look at Election Day.
Giancarlo, very quickly, what does Trump need to do to try to win in Florida and other swing states?
Simple. He needs to get a ground game, which he does not have. And that's a real problem. Again, as we were talking about in the break, we know who his constituents are, but he's got to bring them to the polls. And he is being outspent, outmanned, and outcanvassed by Hillary.
All right, to the debate now, and the first debate comes Monday at Hofstra. We'll be there covering it live, wire to wire, and I'll be there for post-debate analysis. Debate, of course, hasn't even started, and already, well, Donald Trump is complaining.
Well, I'm going to be treated very unfairly during the debate.
Are you worried that Lester Holt is going to be unfair to you now?
Well, I have I have a set of things that I'll be doing if that's the case.
Sure.
I've always found him to be fair, but the system, as I said, it's a very, very dirty system.
And while we're talking about the debate, we've got a very specific, very detailed listing of what the topics are going to be from Lester Holt. They're going to include America's direction, achieving prosperity, and securing America. So you can really put you can even put Skittles into one of those categories, and it would pop up and it would fit. All right, so does Donald Trump complaining about the referees in all of this impact the way the debate happens, Dominic? Do you think that puts Lester Holt and later on Anderson Cooper, Martha Raddatz, and Chris Wallace on the defensive?
He's in cold talk. He's sending a direct message to Lester Holt. Having moderated a Hillary Clinton debate, I know how these things go. The message is, right about now, Lester Holt is probably still doing nightly news, but all of his attention is focused on a debate. That's what it's going to be for the next couple of days. They're probably, I'm not sure about this, I'm only speculating, they're probably going to remove him off air from nightly news the closer we get to the debate. All of his energies are into that debate. With Hillary, I removed myself from the world, but you notice everything that's going on around you. So yes, he said what he... Lester Holt already knows that Trump has a habit of trying to embarrass people live. And so, I was thinking about Candy Crowley today. Where is she in terms of, the last debate, the last person for this to happen? So, yes, he's throwing a blow back at the umpire.
You think he goes softer on some of the topics or
No, he can't. Lester Holt can't. But in terms of the follow-ups, that's where the key question is going to come in.
Dominic's right. This is a clear case of working the ref in the first couple minutes of the game. And that's what Donald Trump's doing. He's putting Lester Holt on notice. And also, let's face it, Donald Trump can deploy a tactic that's never been deployed in debates before, but he can use it. He can attack Lester live in Hofstra and go after him, and he'll know that'll boost his numbers amongst his supporters, and he may do it.
I want you to play campaign consultant for a second for me on this, and Michael, I'll start with you. For Hillary, what would be your advice to her in approaching this debate? Come out swinging, be a fact checker, just try to be above it all and try to be the president on the stage. What would your advice to her be?
Not to address him directly and not to attack him, because everything that has happened up until now in the Republican primaries, with all the attacks that went on then, and everything straight through the general election to this point has not dented him and has only fed the beast that is his brand and media machine.
But even if he goes through things like you founded ISIS and you know you killed
the world
Vince
is a much
Foster
more
and-
complicated place than that. You have no idea what you're talking about, and you speak directly to the American people and to the and to the audience. Don't address him because you can't beat him. What he does, you can't. We always have a saying, and you know this: don't run other people's campaign. If you run other people's campaigns, you can't beat them. You run your campaign, and if she tries to respond to him and run his campaign, you can't win.
And Giancarlo, I'm curious your take on Trump. Do you stick with the formula that worked so well during the debates in the primary process? Is he going to be the same Donald Trump, or do you try to get him to take it down a notch?
I think you combine the two. I think that in a composed way, you hit on several themes. Most notably, that you're the agent of change. Most notably, that you'll bring change to Washington in a way that it's never seen before. And thirdly, that the woman opposite me on this stage or next to me on this stage is part of the problem, part of the status quo, and she cannot possibly do for the country what you can do.
When he
and you
says
leave it
Hillary
there.
founded ISIS, it's ludicrous. But if he fleshed that out to say it was the Obama State Department and decisions that were made involving the Arab Spring and Libya and Syria that have created this situation, that is a far more nuanced, sophisticated, not incorrect position. But he can't do that.
Dominic, I'm curious. What are you going to be watching more, and what do you think is going to be more important, what they say or how they say it on Monday?
It's always more important, unfortunately, in terms of how they say it, how you come off. Well, the one advice that I give Trump in the Republican debates, when he didn't know something, he just made it up, went with whatever he felt comfortable with. He cannot do that on this stage. If you don't have an answer to a question, go back to your stump speech and just don't try and fake it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the latest Republican to dump Trump, and this one's a biggie.